Hello, everyone. Welcome to the White County Public Library. My name is Anita, and we're here today to be a part of the 2020 Summer Reading Program here at the White County Public Library. Our guest today is James Burden, and he is here to speak to us about the National Negro League. Welcome, James.
Thank you, Anita, and I'm glad to be here. Outstanding work that's put on by the White County Public Library, and I appreciate you having me as just one of your many, hopefully, guests that you will be having.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. Our first question today for you, Mr. James, is, we know you like sports. What is your favorite?
From the time I was a young boy, I guess I grew up being around baseball, and baseball became my passion, really. So, to answer your question, baseball would be my sport of choice because I was around it more, and the people with whom I was around it with were some just outstanding men and women, if you will. So they got you interested, and from that point on, I've been hooked on baseball.
All right. You know, back in the day, as we call it, I remember as a little girl, the Negroes here in White County played different teams all over the state of Tennessee, and most of the games were played right in front of my house, what they called out on the creek. Our baseball field was out there, and every Sunday there was a game going on after church. So I can understand that. I wasn't able to play, but my brothers, my uncles, cousins, and all played at that field there. And like I said, go to McMinnville, Manchester, Winchester, and all those places to play out in the fields. We didn't have what you call a regular baseball. They just made a field out of whatever they could find to play in. It was always fun to go to those games and stuff.
Now, that was my great uncle happened to be the first African American manager, and right here in White County. He had come out of North Carolina, where he had coached baseball at a coal miners camp there in North Carolina. His name is Lee Burton, and Uncle Lee, he started young men playing baseball once they returned from the military in the 40s. And he had been around seeing Negro League baseball teams playing because they couldn't play in the White League at that time. So, to your comments, we played baseball in about 4 different locations here in the county, and your backyard, front yard was one of them. Yes.
Did you talk about specific teams or anyone in particular?
Well, you know, from having a personal attachment to any of the teams, I did not. However, I visited the Negro League Baseball Players Museum in Kansas City, Missouri. While I was there at opening night gala, and there were professionals in all sports. There were movie stars, actors. There were writers. And in fact, one of the writers who went on to produce a PBS documentary on Negro League Baseball, Ken Burns. I met him, but at the time, I didn't know Ken Burns from Sally Johnson, okay? But nevertheless, meeting Ken Burns, along with other players who had played all across the United States, Cool Papa Bell, Satchel Paige, Mrs. Jackie Robinson and her daughter, Sharon. Outstanding people, enjoyable to talk with. Mickey Mantle Jr., the owner of the Chicago Bulls. Lots of players, lots of people to be out there with. And the museum itself, the opening night of it, that museum had an area that had statues of Negro League baseball players situated in positions in a field. And one of the interesting things, they had this announcer, and he would go, well, the fans are all packed here in the stadium. He said, it looks like it's going to be a good game. And he said, their teams are warming up. And he said, oh my, Vetter steps to the plate. He hits the ball down to the shortstop. Shortstop fires over to first base. He's out. Wait a minute. He's not got a baseball. What's going on here? That was the way they practiced. And they called that throwing the ball, an imaginary ball around.
Yes.
And they called that shadow ball. The reason they called it shadow ball was because they had to play in the shadows of the major leagues, which was for the whites at that time only. But nevertheless, the times that they had, they made money. Over about 2,600 African American men had jobs playing baseball. So that's how important it was.
Oh my. What do you know or have learned about the Negro League?
Well, as I said, being one of the nation's largest employer of blacks at the time, they didn't use it as a game, although it was a game, but they used it as a job opportunity and a possible promotion at some point in time in their lives that they could one day get into the major leagues, the white major leagues. And that's what they looked for. And some of them would later on go on and play into the major leagues. The Negro League started in 1920, ended in 1960. And its ending was due to the number of players that were going from the Negro Leagues into now the integrated white major leagues.
Has anything about the Negro League been on television?
Well, I mentioned Ken Burns, his PBS documentary, an outstanding job. Photos, interviews with the living black baseball, Negro League baseball players at that time. They had interesting stories to tell. How they traveled, where they stayed and where they could not stay, where they could eat and where they could not eat. His program really shed light on a time when what I get to see, well, I got to experience some of that time, but now you can really see what that time was like once you see that PBS documentary.
Yes. I can remember some of the stories about how that's how the Negro really served their country, was that they played baseball instead of holding a gun. They kept the machinery clean for the white soldiers, but they were out there playing their baseball, serving their country that way. Now, have you ever met any of the African American soldiers from White County or any other county that maybe have been at Tullahoma or down in Georgia, where they were unable to serve their country only by playing baseball? Have you met anyone?
I've met someone who played baseball and served his country in the military. His name was James Tenderfoot Lepton. So, interesting man,
Yes.
great storyteller. He was one. There are others that I can't bring to mind just yet, but there were a few others. Yes.
And it brings back to my mind of our oldest African American here in White County, Ulysses Cully.
You know, Mr. Cully is my neighbor. I've known him all my life, coached his sons in Babe Ruth baseball. Mr. Cully took me to my first Atlanta Braves baseball game. So, an enjoyable time because I was able to witness Bob Gibson pitching for the St. Louis Cardinals, whereas before I could only listen to him on the radio. But I got to see him up close and personal, along with another guy by the name of Henry Aaron, whom I also met at an earlier time.
All right. Yes, it's so sad now that Mr. Cully, his health has deteriorated, and I talk to his daughter very often, and she said, well, he's in there talking to somebody about baseball, football, or something, but he's doing well. We served our country so diligently, and a lot of things come out of that. And growing up here in White County, what do you have to say about growing up here in White County?
You know, this may sound cliche, but of all the places that I've never lived in another place other than Sparta and White County. I did spend some time in Smithfield, okay, but just having visited other towns and cities, there's no place like home. In White County, Sparta is home. There are people whom I've known all my life, my age, some younger. I even have children who come up, they're not children anymore, although I consider them, who played for me, and they'll come up and say something to me.
Yes.
They know Mr. Cully. They know other African Americans in town. My feelings are, wouldn't want to move anywhere else. This is where I want to. Since I've lived here, here's where I want to die.
All right. I can understand that. My brother Jerry passed away last November, and it has amazed me how many people have come up to me. He was my coach. We played ball together. I have so many memories of him and the softball teams that we used to have here in the summertime and stuff. He either coached or he was playing or he was umpiring. And sometimes they say he was a good umpire, and sometimes he wasn't a good umpire. But being in White County, that is home. That is home to a lot of us. Yes, a lot of us have moved away, but it is still home.
Yes, Jerry was one of those, if you will, I call it an apple who fell off my tree. Jerry, boom, played lots of softball with him, lots of baseball with him, but of course grew up with him, being, he's my relative. But his brother Charles Robert, I have a really fond memory with him. Charles Robert and I, along with Roy Henderson and Bruce Big Daddy Evans, we integrated the Connie Mack 16 to 18-year-old baseball league here in Sparta. A man by the name of Garvin Haley was highly instrumental in integrating that 16 to 18-year-old White League. And in fact, White County, Sparta, we were the Sparta Yankees. And Sparta, it was a 14-county league. Sparta and Cookeville were the only two counties with black athletes. And Charles Robert, one of my fondest memories of him, he was kind of smallish in stature, but he had a good muscular build. We was in Crossville playing, the Crossville Generals. And we were trailing by like 2 runs, but we had the bases loaded. Charles Robert, we were playing at the Crossville Fairgrounds, or the Cumberland County Fairgrounds, I forget which one. And the game had to be moved from a Saturday night to a Monday night because blacks had never played in Crossville before. But nevertheless, back to this. Charles come to bat with the bases loaded, and he hit one. If I know any measurements at all, based off of experiences that I've had, he hit one at least 400 foot. It went over the barn up there in Cumberland, up there at the fairgrounds. And the barn was where they have their, the show horses and things they store. So we win that. Off of Charles's Grand Slam. So I remember him for that.
Good.
And then we would go on, and under Mr. Haley's guidance, and we would win the Upper Cumberland Conference Championship, and we'd go to the state tournament down in Dyersburg, Tennessee, and a tremendous time. And Mr. Haley, he never let us go into a place that we couldn't eat, that all the players couldn't eat. And it was very well orchestrated. He was an outstanding man for it.
Well, James, thank you so much for your time today. We'd like to remind everyone that Here at the library, we do have books on the Negro Baseball League. You're more than welcome to come anytime to the library and check these books out. It's very interesting reading. I know right now that the library is closed, but when we're open again, please feel free to come in and check out these books. And the kids, I know they'll be interested. Miss Dana has plenty of history in her department, in the children's department. So thank you again, and goodbye from the White County Public Library.